See, most of us were taught to manage behavior, but my guest today, he teaches us to read it, to see every child not as a difficult or flawed, but simply trying to find their rhythm and reaching out in the only way they know how. He's a board certified pediatrician who spent over 35 years helping families decode what kids are really trying to say with their behavior. And what he discovered is that behind every symptom is a story, is a rhythm that medicine alone cannot explain. And once you hear him speak, ADHD will never look the same again. Please welcome Dr. Stephen Cowan. Hi, Dr. Stephen. Welcome to the show.
Hello, how are you? It's really a pleasure to be here and an honor. I love the work that you're doing in the world, so thank you for having me.
Thank you. Such an honor. It's a pleasure to get you finally on board. I'm so excited for our topic. Before we dig in, could you give us a quick introduction so the listeners can get to know you better?
I'm a developmental pediatrician as well as a general pediatrician. I ran a busy pediatric practice for 25 years while also doing my developmental pediatric work. And my first job out of my fellowship training was I was very interested in chronic illness and how it affects development. That was my thing back almost 40 years ago. And I became the medical director of the Asthmatic Children's Foundation. These were very chronically ill kids um, that were stuck in hospitals, and I brought them up to the countryside and virtually lived with them. They stayed for 6 months at minimum, and I took them on hikes, and I could develop the program however I wanted. And it opened my eyes to a whole new way of understanding what health is because I could get these kids off all their medication, which I was taught can't be done. Right? So, even in ADHD, there's this tendency, once a kid goes on meds, they think, "Okay, it's like a pair of glasses," a lot of people like to say, "You can never come off." That's absurd. If I told you, "You have a fever, and, here's your Tylenol, take it for the rest of your life so you never get a fever," every parent would laugh at that. So it's the same thing, ADHD are symptoms. Question what good medicine asks is, what's it a symptom of? So I spent my whole career getting back into what it's like to understand kids. And the language I've been using lately is um, being a hero in the world. What is it like? And kids really respond to that. Not a superhero like Spider-Man, but a real human hero, fireman or a teacher. What is it? What are the qualities? And I ask every kid that. And then we start unpacking what kind of hero they are. And that makes the whole thing so much fun. It's not like me checking off little things on a checklist and looking at you and analyzing you like you're a specimen in a lab. It's fun. I gamified everything so that we're growing your hero powers.
Before we go on with this session, I just wanted to remind you that you can still upgrade to the Summit's VIP Pass. Besides the lifetime access to all the sessions, you also get the audio files, you get the workbook for each session, you get the expert action blueprint with key takeaways from each masterclass, you get the English subtitles, and really a bunch of other things that will save you tons of time and really make a huge difference with your kid and with your family relationships. So, if you're a busy parent and you want to get the most out of the summit, then I really encourage you to find the button somewhere on this page and go check it out. You can still get access at a discounted price before our summit ends. And now, let's get you back to the program. Brilliant. Brilliant.
So,
Let's
in a nutshell, I didn't give you all my details of all the things you can look me up somewhere to get all that.
we'll find out more during this conversation.
Okay.
I'm sure. Thank you for that. Let's start off with something that you've said, which is that ADHD isn't a disorder, but a cry for help. Um, so when you look at an average child being diagnosed today, what would you say? What's the real signal you
Yeah.
think that behavior is really trying to send out there?
Yeah. Well, there's a thing, I want your viewers to understand about behavior and all the negative language that children will cry out for. I hate school. I hate myself. I can't. All that, whether it's the language or the behaviors and, distractibility, impulsivity, these are real. I'm not saying they're not real, but they're symptoms of something. And so that when I say cry for help, every symptom is a cry for help. So, but what is the basic structure, and we'll get back to this again and again and again today, is underneath every behavior is a feeling. That's logical. Every behavior is an expression of a feeling. If it's a negative behavior, it's an uncomfortable feeling. But underneath the feeling is a need that's not being met. Okay. And that need is what matters to that child. That's not satisfying something, right? And we'll get into what I really mean in the nitty-gritty, but if everybody just thinks about the way I lay it out is think, feel, need. And our job as parents and as practitioners and as teachers is to always try to get to the ground floor, not keep working at the top about he's doing this, he's doing that, he's doing this, he's saying that. What's the feeling underneath it? And what's the need underneath that feeling? Because when you connect to the need, that's love. That's what love is. That's loving because a child will feel seen. So I would say the shorter answer to your question is children are not being seen or heard or understood. The word understand is a beautiful word because it means to stand under the behavior, stand under the behavior to understand what that is. Often when you get to that core with a parent driving the behavior, what's driving the feeling, they tears become come in their eyes. That's how I know I'm hitting them at the heart and not just at the head. As a doctor, I was taught to teach to speak to the head. You need this because of that. You need this, right? And that's a kind of fear-based medicine. Whereas speaking to the heart, everybody's feeling seen and heard. Before we're trying to fix anything, right? We're trying to understand. So the short answer is this disconnection that children are crying out for because they don't feel seen. Their environment is not meeting their needs. And their needs are a need to grow. The need is about what enlivens me, what makes me feel alive and wonderful today, that is the fuel for growth. So think, feel, need in order to grow. So always, the hero, I will say to a kid, so, okay, you're a fire hero, or you want to be, it looks like you have firepower, what do you need to grow that power to be a hero in the world? And that opens up wonderful games. We'll get into that.
We'll get to that definitely. Let's first get to the attention, the first part of the AD.
Yeah, yeah,
A lot of people think, because of the H, HD, AD is, broken attention.
yeah.
But you said that attention itself doesn't disappear in a kid. It just kind of moves towards, what matters most to a child.
Correct.
Right?
So, yeah. Go
So
ahead.
if attention is always there, if it exists, it's just kind of redirected. Then what exactly are we in this modern world measuring when we say attention deficit?
Yeah. So the deficit is that they're not paying attention to what we want them to pay attention. So that's the deficit, right? But in reality, so it's the frustration of whoever is, having a problem with a kid not paying attention, getting dressed to go to school, or not, looking out the window instead of listening to the teacher, or whatever. The deficit is between the teacher wanting them to pay attention to what's important to them and the child trying to pay. uh, I always start with this. I understand your child's not paying attention in school or whatever. What is your child paying attention to? I always ask that. And it's like wakes everybody up. It's like, "Wait, what?" I said, "Well, what is he paying attention to instead of paying attention to the thing that you want him to pay attention to?" Because we're the brain is designed to pay attention. Every part there is no ADHD broken part of the brain. There is no attention part of the brain. All of us are wired to pay attention. Our senses, our physical movement, our muscles, our emotions, our thought processes. So what I guess the thing that I think is a problem is when um, a teacher says he's not paying attention in class. The question is, how could that teacher make it more interesting for that particular unique child? Nobody likes to ask that. Now, why do you think nobody likes to ask that? Why do you think they don't wanna ask, "What can I do to make it more interesting to him or her?" Because in the model we've created, in medicine and in education, it's what I call assembly line education or assembly line medicine. All ear infections are treated with this. All ADHD is treated with this, right? It's a one size fits all model, and the expectations are really weirdly based on age when it comes to education. Oh, he's 7, he should be doing this without any understanding of who the child is. It's just this very sort of rigid model, what I would call I don't know if you're familiar with Carol Dweck's work. Carol Dweck, you should get her on your show. She's amazing. She wrote the book Mindset, MIN so she's very busy, obviously, but she's brilliant, and mindset, there's fixed mindset and growth mindset. So, she's done all this elegant research understanding that, and fixed mindset is very black and white thinking. You have ADHD. That's a black and white diagnosis. There's no nuance to it. There's no sense of growth, and, what happens in a lot of kids is they'll take the diagnosis and they'll say, "Oh, I can't do that. It's my ADHD." So now we've cut out the possibility of growing, and that becomes a label that damns them. The same thing happens with genetics, the same thing happens with autism. Right? Sometimes a label in an older kid can liberate them to understand themselves, but sometimes it becomes an excuse for not having to change and be and actually evolve. We're here to adapt. So I think the deficit is about adapting. Humans are the greatest adapters on the planet. And yet when you put them in a box, the smaller the box, the more kids are gonna fall out of the box because you're not giving them the space to actually adapt and to feel empowered in the world and proud of what they can do and what their secret powers are and how they can evolve them to make them work for them in any situation. I don't wanna demonize education because there's a reality, for 5,000 years, they've been training attention in India, in China, in martial arts, in meditation. So it's not a new phenomenon that attention is a holy thing. There's a great, um, quote that Mary Oliver, the great poet, said that attention is the beginning of devotion. So we're really asking, what are we devoting ourselves to? And devotion is such a beautiful, holy term. So it becomes like, what is this? How many parents will say to me, he's not paying attention in class, but he could spend 4 hours with his Legos. Well, what is that? So is his attention broken? No. When it's Legos, he's like in there. Nothing's broken. It's just I want him to be able to survive in any situation.
Mm, got it. Got it. But however, when you were talking about the assembly line, you were trained,
I was
in
trained in that
manner.
much. Yeah,
But now you don't treat the symptoms themselves, but you treat the context, right,
yeah.
of it. So when a parent comes to you and says, we've tried everything, nothing works for a kid, what's the first thing that you check that most
So
doctors probably never do?
that's yeah, no, that's great. It's a great question. Context is a very important word for me because context is sort of the matrix of relationships that you exist in. It's all the variables, family dynamics, friends, diet, sleep, right? Uh, screen time, exercise, right? All of these are even breathing. These are the context, but the most fundamental is the relationship. So the short answer is I always look at the relationships moving around this child, within their body and outside their body. What are those relationships and where is the imbalance in those relationships that may be triggering fight or flight behavior, which is all that ADHD is fight or flight behavior, right? Fight is all the oppositional resistant behaviors that we see. I'm not doing that. I'm not paying attention. I'm walking out of this class, right? Or flight, which is I'm going to stare out the window or I'm going to shut down that's fight or flight. I could add excite to that too, but these are all nervous energy that has is looking for an outlet because it's ungrounded. So the context, family dynamics, how we eat, not just what we eat, but how we eat, where we sleep, how we sleep. All of these things are the fundamental context. That's the first place I look.
Nice. Brilliant. You were mentioning Chinese medicine when we began to this conversation. I don't know if a lot of people know, but your work borrows from
Oh,
Chinese medicine,
yeah,
right?
yeah, big
That's
time.
that's the system that was built right before ADHD had
3,000
existed.
years ago, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And back then, they didn't talk about disorders. They only talked about imbalance
Yeah,
in the body,
beautiful.
right? So, if you described a child with ADHD with a new diagnosis of ADHD to a Chinese doctor from 2,000 years ago, what imbalance would they see in a child?
Okay, so it's a great question, but be careful because I made that question mistake when I first started studying Chinese medicine. I did martial arts when I was young. I was always in the back of my mind. I taught kids breathing exercise and stuff. So I once was asked years ago, 35 years ago, I was introduced to this famous Chinese doctor in Chinatown, in New York. As an introduction, I had one question. How do you treat eczema in babies? And the guy looked at me and said, well, what color is the baby's poop? And I said, "What baby?" And he said, "The baby with eczema." And I said, "No, no. I just want to know how you treat eczema." And he didn't understand the question because the label doesn't fit the uniqueness of your context, your situation. So ADHD, if we could ask, what's the basic, uh, problem? How would a Chinese medicine person look at it? There is a short answer to that, but I don't wanna give you the short answer because it's complicated, and I wanna embrace complexity. So there are different types of ADHD. That's the revelation. That's what I teach everywhere, that there's no one ADHD. There are different types. There's no one autism. There are many different autisms. There are many different asthmas. So we'll say there are 5 types of ADHD. Now, I could say in a nuance, there are probably 25, but we'll keep it simple for this conversation. And so The imbalance is what we're looking for, and the Chinese medicine doctor would say, "Well, where's the imbalance that's causing a child to not be able to pay attention in this particular setting, but able to pay attention in that setting?" That is how they would answer it, right? So one size doesn't fit all. There's no what's the imbalance in ADHD? It's which of these imbalances manifesting, affecting attention. Now, generally speaking, attention problems don't exist in a vacuum. There's always a physical aspect to it. We don't want to separate the mind from the body, right? So I'm always looking at, the physical qualities, their health, chronic ear infections, rashes, stomach aches, bowel movement problems, constipation. Constipation itself is a cause of ADHD in some rare cases. You know what it's like if you've ever been constipated. It's hard to get through your day. You're carrying around this load that's holding you back. So the physical part is as important to me as this cognitive part. So that, always keep the mind and body together. If we separate it, or if we think ADHD is a thing that we can treat as if it exists in some absolute, that's fixed mind thinking, and there's no growth in that. There's just, "Here's your prescription," which I did for a number of years. I was trained to do that at some pretty famous, medical centers. They said, "Oh, if you see these symptoms, give this medicine," like strep throat. ADHD is not like strep throat because the causes are so complex and multiple. Whereas strep throat, I know you have strep throat. Okay, here's your antibiotic. And I'm not against medication, by the way. There are certain situations where medication can really be useful and can transform a child's self-esteem and confidence and interest, but it's not a long-term solution, and it's not for every type of ADHD.
Right. Right. Um, when you were talking about imbalances, I just wonder what would you say if you had to name one thing in
Mhm.
modern childhood that's throwing kids, mostly most out of balance?
Yeah.
What would it be? What would you
Yeah,
say?
I would say it's the relationship. We'll get into the 5 elements in a second, but I would say that, um, water, power is a deficit in 80% of the kids I see. So what is that? Water is listening, it's quiet time, it's alone time, it's, a quality of deep thinking, sort of quiet time thinking, reflecting on your day, you know, imagination, um, but it's a quality that is, slow. And we don't like slow, at least here in the States, we don't like slow. Yeah, for me, I lived in Italy for a number of years, and slow was like an art. You wait 2 hours to get your meal served because, they want you to have a conversation and take it easy, and that became a very important revelation to me. I watched all these Americans in the Italian, um, cafes, like, "What's going on? Where is it?" And they're getting all heated up and excited. The love of life in Europe is much more, and I think in Slovenia, you know this, although it's probably changing, that type A, "Let's go, 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 this kid's not moving fast enough." That rush is the antithesis. That's more wood. It's the antithesis to water. Water is slow. It's wintertime energy where you go deep, you go slow. It's the roots. So I would say that's the element that's the most underdeveloped in our culture. And then the second is earth, which is our relational health. I want to talk for a minute about something very important. The American Academy of Pediatrics, of which I'm part of, on their section of developmental disabilities, finally, after years of resisting, reviewed all this research that showed and they coined the phrase relational health, which is a powerful statement. And they showed in all this research, and they made a policy statement that this is the key. It's not just helpful, it's an antidote to trauma. Antidote, meaning it's the cure, is the quality of secure, consistent relationships in your life. And so cultivating relationships, which is earth, and this kind of going deep of water, those are the missing elements across the board in our society. That I call it I call it this, it's kind of a joke. I call it AI, okay? Alienation inflammation. So it's the alienation that people are feeling that triggers a lot of the negative behaviors we're seeing in our society. Anxiety, Alzheimer's, ADHD, allergies, they all start with the letter A, right? Um, this is a kind of feeling cut off from who you were really meant to be. In ancient times, the tribe, everybody had a purpose in the tribe. Now people don't know what their purpose is. Teenage boys are looking for a purpose. They wanna go build a house, or they wanna go hunt, or they wanna go and they're stuck in a box, and they don't know what's their purpose, what's their motivation. Alienation, inflammation.
Information, right?
AI.
AI.
No,
Okay. I keep
exactly.
that in mind. Okay, let's go now to the good part because you
Yeah,
use this. I'm sure that a lot of people were like, what's he talking about?
right.
Five element model, right?
Yeah,
Wood, fire, earth, and metal, and water.
and
Sorry.
what
Um, you use that kind of to understand how each child naturally adapts to the environment, right?
right.
Um, so when a child walks into your office, how do you actually figure it out which element they
This and even watching your body language, it changed a little bit because you were excited to talk about this because it's novel, right? You're not used to. This is the fun part. So first, I meet with the parents, and I have them fill out a questionnaire, and people can go on to my website and see there's a link to several different ways you can fill out a questionnaire for your child, and you'll get a point spread of how much wood, how much fire, how much water, how much earth, and how much metal percentages. It doesn't add up to 100% because you could have 70% wood and 70% fire. You know, so you have all of them in you, but there's always a dominant theme in each child I meet. Rarely there's a tie between 2. Usually there's even 1 point stronger. And so I have parents play that game with me so that we can then start this dialogue with them, and then I have them do it for themselves so they understand who they are as well. Just as a moment in time. It will change over time depending on their growth. It's a way of orienting to the complexity of who, you are, right? Who I am. And so then once they've done that, then I say to them, okay, when he comes to see me, when the child comes to see me, here's how you're going to say it. Dr. Steve is going to try to figure out what your secret power is and how to grow it. That's all I say. I said, don't say anything else. I'm not fixing anything. There's nothing wrong with you. So it's a positive experience. They come in and they're really curious. What does this mean, secret power? And so then I sit down and I draw pictures, I lay it out. Wood is very competitive, very physical, very kind of eyes on the prize, goal oriented, mover and shaker, always kind of on a little impatient to get there fast, very visual learners. Or we say kinesthetic learners, they learn by doing, right? When they're stressed out, when the fight or flight is in place, their type of ADHD is hyperactive, oppositional, a little aggressive, and, pushy. They push back, right? So we have the hero and the victim of circumstances. Fire is like the happy-go-lucky, funny, loud, charismatic person that lights up a room when they walk in. Everybody loves them until they're too much, right? These people learn through intuition, big hearts, big feelings, and their intuition is their secret power. Wood's secret power is looking ahead, planning ahead, scheming. Fire is feeling. It's all about feelings. They feel the right answer. They don't like to show their work because they don't know how they came to the answer, but the answer is right. So they have this very intuitive style that we don't know what to do with in our society. When they're stressed out, it's explosive drama queen kind of behavior, or it's the class clown. Big, silly, 'cause, they see by 3rd grade or 2nd grade, everybody's getting too serious and they wanna lighten it up, so they fall off their chair or they tell a fart joke or something to get everybody to laugh because they want everybody to be happy. That's important to them. Fun is important to fire. Earth, they're the peacemaker, they want everybody to get along. That's important to them. They're the ultimate team player. They're the most caring, helpful, kind people. They're not charismatic, big energy fire or the mover and shaker wood person. They don't wanna be alone, they wanna fit in, which is their really important what matters to them, that everybody's getting along and they're fitting in. When they're stressed out, they worry and worry and worry and worry, and they can't make up their own mind. They want somebody else to make up their mind. So their executive function skill is working memory or indecision or organization. They just get sort of muddled in a kind of anxiety-driven AD worry, particularly if they leave their parents are fighting when they go to school. Now they're still worried about their parents fighting, and they're not paying attention in school. Or they're worried, "Who's gonna sit with me at lunch today?" Instead of listening to the teacher, right? So they get in their head. Metal, or what I call gold power, metal people are they want everything to be just right. Their gift is seeing details. They're so good at noticing patterns and details. They're organizing all their cars in a row by color, or their amazing designs of they'll make exactly the Lego thing that's on the box. They'll never make a different thing. They'll make the one that's on the box and leave it there and nobody's supposed to touch it. Their clothes have to be just right, everything, right? So they grow up to be amazing people, engineers, designers, architects, right? When they're stressed out, when the fight or flight is taking over and the ADHD symptoms are coming out, they're hyper focused. So they don't go with the flow. They become so stuck on one thing, the teacher's already moved on to something else and they're still stuck. So they will crumple up their paper if it's not right, or they'll get stuck on it and teacher saying, "Okay, Billy, it's time to move to spelling." And no, I have to finish this for so they get stuck. And then water is our poet, our philosopher, our inventor, our out of the box thinker that comes up with ideas nobody ever thought of before. We need them in the world right now. Right, Leonardo da Vinci and Darwin and Freud and Thoreau and all these amazing minds, but they're thinking about something over there while everybody's talking about something over here. So they don't always fit in. They look a little quirky, a little weird. They're kind of dreamers. They're thinking about a rocket to Mars while the teacher's talking about how to spell, cat. So they look what we call in ADHD language inattentive type ADHD. When they're stressed out, though, they're shut down. They look depressed or apathetic. They won't go to school. They close themselves off. They become like hermits. Very serious when they're disconnected, when their hero power is not being, valued by anyone, they close off. They're like a turtle that goes into its shell. So these are the 5 heroes and the 5 victims of circumstances, not feeling the hero power in them. And what's the solution then, once we go through that with kids and they get really turned on, they always can pick what they are. They're better than the parents because the parents project their own hopes and dreams. The father wants him to be like him, or the mother, doesn't want him to be like him, whatever. Child is tuned in, to they know the way I make it fun, they know who they are, and but then we say, so there's an orientation to that. There's a picture, and I'm gonna go through that with you in a second. There's a map I make of every what I call a hero map, and the head is whatever the primary element is, and then the 2 arms and the 2 legs. Arms are the helpers that help you share your gifts with the world, and the legs are your challengers, because every hero has to be challenged, that keep you stable in the midst of stress. And there's an ancient pattern: water feeds wood, wood feeds fire, fire feeds the ashes make the earth, earth makes the metals in the earth. From the top of a mountain of stone, you get the water. This is winter, spring, summer, harvest, autumn. And you don't need a double blind, randomized controlled study to say that's how things grow in nature. And we're growing kids. We're not fixing kids. That's fixed mind thinking. We're growing kids, right? So water feeds wood. Okay, so we'll get into remember that model. If everybody pictures, all your listeners pictures a clock, 12 o'clock is fire, okay? 2 o'clock is earth, 5 o'clock is metal, 7 o'clock is water, and 10 o'clock is wood. Now we start having a dynamic about each one helps the next. Can you picture that in your mind? Okay. And then there are cross relationships that we'll get into, which challenges. Water puts out fire. Fire melts gold or metal. Metal cuts down wood. These are the challengers. Wood bulldozes through earth. Earth muddies the water. These are the places where ADHD comes out when
Brilliant.
you're being challenged.
Can we go into details of each
Yeah, let's do
each
it.
model? Let's say a parent brings you, a hyperactive, constantly moving kid, which would be a wood child.
Yeah, and that is, by the way, the most classic when people think on your, webcasts on this summit, um, when we think of ADHD, we often are thinking of the wood type ADHD kid. Hyperactive, not sitting still, squirmy, maybe a little argumentative, in a rush, rushes through his work, right? Because he can't wait to get outside to play ball or something, so he's rushing through his work. So wood kids, if we organize this dynamic where wood is the head, the 2 helpers are water and fire. Fire is fun. That's what he's drawn to. Wood is drawn to fire. Water nourishes, it feeds wood. Water is slowing it down. Water is slowing down the sense of urgency in wood people wanna move, 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 move. So we do practices. We literally start with practices. I always start with the what I call the right-hand man. So water feeds wood. So water is there are simple games you can play to develop water power. The most fundamental is listening. Wood is looking, water is listening. So the biggest complaint about wood ADHD kids is that they're looking out the window or they're playing with their pen or they're fidgeting with something there, but it's all visual. They're all looking at stuff. Now, the one of the tricks for curing or at least starting to work on growing attention power, really heroic attention power in a wood kid is how to turn listening into looking. So I'll give you an example for you. Picture a tree in your mind. You got it? Okay, what kind of tree do you imagine? What is it, a specific tree? Is it a Christmas tree? What kind of tree? Palm tree? What do you actually when I said that, what did you imagine in your mind? Okay, so you saw an oak tree. So what you just did, you listened to me and turned what I said into an image in your mind, right? You just did it like magic. Poof, it's a human power. One of the scariest things I'm seeing today in children, since even before the pandemic, is that kids aren't used to seeing, imagining with imagery. And I think one of the reasons is all the screen time does it for you. So you don't have to do it yourself anymore, right? So it's actually this is one of the great human gifts. Wood people were our our explorers, our trailblazers in the tribe. They were ahead of the tribe, keeping landmarks in their mind because they were seeing a rock over there and they were remembering it. Wood people are gifted with that. They will tell you, "Mom, you're going the wrong way," in the car because they have this visual memory that's strong, but they're not used to turning listening into imagery. And when a kid practices that, water to wood, all of a sudden it becomes a game of how to listen to the teacher and make imagery in your mind, like make a little movie in your mind of what the teacher is talking about. So what's the game I play in my office? I'll say, okay, Spila, close your eyes. Um, and I'm gonna tell you 3 commands. This is what I'm doing in the office with the kids standing there, and I'll say, "Okay, take the pirate and put him on the chair, take the blue car and put him by the door, and take the, whatever, the dump truck and put it on the table. Ready, set, go." And they just stand there like, "Huh? What?" Or maybe they get 1. I say, "Okay, now start again. This time, as I say it, picture what I'm saying in your mind. Turn my auditory oral information into imagery, which is his gift. He's a visual learner. So I'm turning it into almost like a map or a flow chart so we can see where, the pirate's going on the chair. Can you see the pirate on the chair? Okay. Can you see? And then I give them the command again and they do it one, two, three, boom. Now their listening attention is not opposed to their looking, but they're working together. That's the first step in wood ADD training. There are others. We have to get the fire going and the earth going and the metal going, and then he's well-rounded and there's no more ADHD.
Nice. Brilliant. So interesting. Let's move on. There's a lot, and there's no way
There
we can
is, and
cover
each one unpacks, but you get the I want the listeners to get this idea that this is a game of finding what is the weak area, the lowest power, how to grow that so it's not opposed to the strong power. It's not triggering. It's not a button pusher. How many parents of wood type ADHD kids say, "You're not listening. You're not listening to me." They say it over and over again, and the kid is feeling more shame, more shame, more shame. And that's for a wood kid just going to make him angry. And he's going to push back and he's not going to listen. Nobody wants to hear shame. Shaming a kid with ADHD is probably the most traumatic thing you can do. Because now we're saying, "What's wrong with you?" Parents are often saying that. "What's wrong with you? Why don't you ever listen?" It's horrible. It's better to say, "Let me help you feed your secret power. Let's grow your listening power." Right? Many wood kids have an auditory processing disorder. I hate to use the word disorder. It's just that they haven't exercised their listening power. And if they're sitting in the back of a class and the teacher's talking, there's kids making noise, which thing are they going to listen to? They're just going to look around like, what's happening? What's happening? What's happening? Because they're very alert, right? Yeah. Let's pick another one. Okay. Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah. Fire kids right. They can create chaos in a classroom. It's very different than a wood kid in a classroom. Wood kid is hyperactive, moving around, squirming around. Fire kids may be squirming too, but it's not the same. It's impulsive behavior, right? One of the characteristics of ADHD is impulsive. And these kids they don't think before they act because they get so full of emotion. They're so inspired. They get like excited that they blurt out an answer. They don't raise their hand, right? Or they say something that's completely off topic, like, I have 10 fingers. And the teacher's talking about, Florida. And it's like, dude, why are you doing that? Right. So they just get so, we say the spirit moves them and they have to say something and they think it's going to be funny and they'll get a laugh. So I don't want to ever put out that fire because those are the kids that bring light to the world. They bring inspiration and hope to the world. That's their real hero power. They are the cheerleader, right? Ultimately, they know how to raise the energy in a room when they're balanced. They we look to them. They become actors and entertainers and politicians and people who can inspire others. But when they have no reason, when things are getting boring in school, to them that's water putting out fire. Water activities are boring to a fire person. They want fun, fun, fun. Everything should be fun or else they don't want to do it. And the biggest challenge to fire kids is growing up, because to them, they never want to grow up because grown-ups are so boring and they just work all the time and they're serious about everything. They worry about money and paying their taxes. And who wants to do that? I want to play, 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 play. Right? So fun is an ingredient that matters to them, play. And obviously there are times that you have to be serious. So what the right-hand man of fire people is wood. Wood feeds fire. And so wood is about movement and setting goals. And so one of the great gifts of fire people who have a lot of anxiety when they're in a situation that it's very serious and they're not feeling their feelings get like amplified. They don't know what to do with the feelings. So wood is about setting goals. And so what I'll create for fire kids, just as a first step, because they always start with the wood, the right-hand man. So I'll make a flow chart. I'll do it like this in the office. I'll say, okay, so Spieler, what are you going to do after you hang up with Steve today? Picture and I'll draw it. Make a little box and then an arrow. What are you going to do after you say, well, I'm going to ask you, what are you going to do after we stop our interview? What are you going to I figured you were. Okay. Now can you in that interview, can you see what, that person is? Is it in your mind? Okay, great. Now what if they're late? What's your backup plan if they're late? What are you gonna do? 'Cause okay. So see, this is really important for fire kids. Fire kids, of all the 5, live in the now, the intensity of now, and I want them to have a broader sense of so then and I try to map out all the way to going to bed, and you see immediately where they forget to eat, or they forget to put their clothes on, or they forget all this ridiculous stuff because 'cause they're actually not thinking about a future. Wood is always about the future. So once they have that tracking, their anxiety goes down, their patience comes up because they can see, okay, after math class, we're going to lunch, so I don't have to freak out. I can pace myself. And that's great for fire kids. So that's sort of step one. Step two would be earth, then three, would be metal and then water. We would go through it depending on what's the most weak part of them, right? And every kid's different. some kids I've seen where they have a lot of wood and fire. A fired kid with a lot of wood, they're competitive, they're good athletes, they can think ahead, can't retrospect behind. Retrospecting behind, like, "How was your day?" And all they can tell you is, "Fine." Then I create what I call the hero questions. I want all your listeners to stop asking, "How was your day?" Because it's too broad a question, and they don't know what you're talking about. So ask a more specific question, like, "Who did you sit next to at lunch?" Or, "What was a fun" here's a fire hero question for any of the 5 kids, right? "What was a funny thing that happened today?" It's a fire hero question. A wood hero question for any kid is, "What was something that you did today that took bravery?" Wood is very brave, courage. So then they have to think about a specific thing. This is a kind of retrospecting. Earth is, "What was a kind thing you did today for somebody, however little?" Right? And they have to start thinking because I wanna build that hero sense in them, because then the ADHD symptoms go away, right? Metal is, "What's a mistake you made today that you corrected without being told to?" You saw the mistake yourself and you corrected it. That's a high five, okay? And water is, "What's something you did today that took a lot of patience? It took a long time, but you got through it." Every time a kid answers these questions, you're growing their power and you're rounding them out because they're starting to think, "I can do this." It's not "I can't" anymore, because so many kids get into that mindset of, "I can't, I can't, I can't," especially fire kids.
If we go now to the Earth Child, you
Yeah.
described it earlier as, the peacemaker, the
Yeah,
natural peacemaker. They
yeah.
like crave this harmony, and they kind of lose themselves in it. Um,
They
so help
yeah,
us understand when that peacekeeping, turns into indecision or confusion. How do you teach parents
yeah.
to bring some sort of structure in their life without crushing their sense of safety, because they need that, right? They
They definitely need that, and it's actually the way you said it shows your amazing understanding of these principles. The depth of your questions is so good. Yeah, so the way I explain it is the Earth kid, when they're not grounded, when they're not present fully, um, get muddy. It's water and earth make mud. Now, when it's really got structure, and that's the word you use, which is brilliant, you can make bricks and build a house out of earth. But if you don't have the structure, which is metal, then you have mud. And mud looks like this behaviorally in an earth kid. They're worried, they're confused, they're whiny, they can't decide which thing to do first. Their executive functions of organizing and prioritizing now aren't strong. So think about what prioritizing is. Prioritizing is choosing this over that. But a peacemaker says, "No, I want them both to be happy." So it's like this in school, right? The kid says, "If I sit with you, you'll be upset, and if I sit with you, you'll be upset. I don't know which one to do. You decide." And they give away all their power to somebody else. And so that's not an empowered earth state. So what we're talking about is the right-hand man is fire, which is sense of humor. Lighten up. What are you feeling? And explore those feelings of worry and what if, because they have endless what ifs. Indecisive. Procrastination is a big part of the ADHD earth kid. They put things off because they can't decide which thing to prioritize, or they do the easy stuff and they leave the hard stuff for later. And now it's, midnight and they're still doing their work, whining and crying, and "I can't do it." They feel terrible about themselves. Often they blame themselves rather than blaming others, right? Wood people are always blaming other people, but earth people turn it on themselves, so their self-esteem suffers. So metal, though, is about prioritizing step 1, which is the first thing that's important to do? You have to choose. So it's a practice of choice. And these kids have trouble with that. So we want to grow that power because that's the other arm of an earth kid, right? Fire and metal are the arms. And the word you used was structure. Now, often, because earth kids are so sweet and parents, we have to look at very carefully how they help organize and structure step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5. That's very metal. And that really gives earth people a sense of security to proceed because every little step is a victory. I got through step 1, I got through step 2, which is almost um, different than the way they think. What earth kids love to do is work in groups. Some schools will have group work, and they're happy with that. But when they're asked to work alone, that stresses them out because that's not their thing. They don't wanna be alone. The ones that wanna be alone are water and wood. Water wants to go sit in their cave and meditate, and wood wants to go do their own thing and don't tell me what to do, right? So, earth people get a little stressed out by 3rd grade or 4th grade whenever we say, "All right, class, everybody work alone." And so that they don't know how to prioritize when they're alone because they have no one to follow. So parents and teachers have to create the structure through steps, labeled based on most important to least important. Something that earth people don't want to decide on. Everything's important to an earth person, right? So we have it's not a healthy way to look at life, right? There are priorities. And so that becomes a game of organizing. And sometimes in the body, you have to release some of the anxiety that Earth kids ADHD, the cause of an Earth kid's ADHD is their anxiety, is their worry. So breath work is the first rhythm, the first structure. Breathe in, let it out. It's what's called Dr. Steve's power breaths. It looks like this. Breathe in, make 2 fists, but breathe into your belly, not your chest. It's like kung fu breathing. And then what you're doing is you're letting all your worries out into the room. So you're clearing your head of all the extra thinking that goes around and around and around. These kids have trouble falling asleep at night because they're worried about tomorrow. They don't want to let the teacher down or their friends down or so we got to clear all of that. Breath work is metal too. Remember, the beautiful thing in Chinese medicine is each of these 5 elements is associated with an organ in the body. So, water is the adrenal glands and the kidneys, wood is the muscles and the liver detoxification, earth is the heart and the circulation. I mean, sorry, fire is the heart and circulation, earth is digestion, and metal is breath work, the lung. So we would use for structure, the most fundamental structure we have is you breathe in and you breathe out. I'll make a joke of it with kids and I'll say, all right, Spila, breathe in. Now breathe in again. And everybody laughs. I go, what do you mean? I can't do that because there's an order. There's a rule. Metal is about rules. You breathe in and then you have to breathe out. And then you breathe in and then you have to breathe out. Everything is following rules. And when Earth people understand that principle, oh, it's a game changer for them. There are other pieces. I have to get them back in their body. So wood, which pushes Earth, I want Earth kids doing exercise, physical exercise, because they become a bit like blobs. They don't really want, they're not physically active, and it can transform Earth kids' attention. I'm an Earth guy, and I had ADHD as a kid. They didn't call it that back then. In the '60s, they just thought I was in I don't know what they thought. But one teacher transformed me and showed me I was like the smartest kid in the class. But in medical school, I learned that if I ran every day, I could study more effectively. Without running, it was like, and the running was a pacing, right? It's this meditation. It's like pacing. So, it became really a way to clear my head. This is an earth quality where wood motivates earth to get going. Remember, wood is very eyes on the prize. So earth people need.
Brilliant. Let's go to the perfectionist, the metal one.
Yeah, so they're tough because they're the most prone to fixed mind thinking, black and white thinking. Metal kids, these perfectionists that don't want to do something if they can't do it exactly right, or they beat themselves up if they make mistakes, or they get stuck on what's wrong instead of seeing the positive in situation. Fire is positive thinking. Fire melts metal. So I'll always ask a metal kid when they come in. So I just had one yesterday in the office and I said, tell me one positive thing that happened today. And they're like this, nothing. There's always something. Work a little harder, and we work on it with a sense of humor to find some ridiculous thing or funny thing or positive thing that happened, right? That has to be part of their practice, right? But Earth is their right-hand man, and Earth is friendship. Friendship for metal people allows them to soften those hard edges of perfectionism. It's empathy training. And for metal kids with ADHD, one of the most powerful things that helps relieve their ADHD symptoms is getting them to ask questions about other people. It's like it gets them out of themselves. So, a dinner table, which is the great training ground for all ADHD, how your kid is at the dinner table tells you how he is in a classroom. Right? Because if that's a gathering place where you're supposed to be exchanging ideas and listening and talking and eating and, right, sharing. So metal people get stuck in their own little rigid world. I wanna open that up. So here's the game. It's called the high five game, and you're gonna play it with me real fast. I know we're probably over time, but it doesn't matter to me. Ready? I'm Earth. See, I don't have that boundary stuff. So ask me a question about myself.
About you.
Anything you want.
Okay, what is your morning routine?
Okay, so already you've set the conversation. So now the 5 questions, who, where, when, how, why, or whatever you want, is built around my morning routine. Okay, so you already know a little bit about me because you're so smart and you've done your research. I get up and the first thing I do before I look at my phone or walk my dog or anything is I go outside and I do Tai Chi. Now ask me a follow-up question
How
based
long?
on my answer, based on my answer.
Okay, how long is your Tai Chi session?
About 20 minutes. 15 to 20 minutes. So I have to get up early because I got to be on time at work. So already the follow up question, if you watched your own mind, a follow up question means you were listening to my answer and engaging further into my story. The story is Earth. Metal softens its edges because now you've shifted your attention into the other. It's not about me, and being right or wrong. It's now your curiosity is the cure. Well, I would say curiosity is not a, it's the cure for ADHD, right? Caring is the cure, right? Everyone knows this. A kid is interested in something, they pay attention to it. So I'm getting a middle child, and water kids too, to shift their attention to someone else because they get so involved in their own little world. And that softens that rigid edge. And the more they are interested in my story, and the high five is they have to ask 5 connected questions based on my answers to their questions. So you said it on my morning routine. You asked the second question. Then I would ask you a third question based on my second answer. And if you can get the all 5, you get the high five.
Nice, nice.
That's
Brilliant.
earth to metal.
Brilliant.
And
And the
there
last one. Okay.
last
And the
the
last one,
hardest
water
one,
child. I'm sorry, we don't have a lot more time.
I
Uh,
know we don't.
the
So
dreamer, the dreamer.
water people, and I know you want to get to your lightning questions, which we'll do, but water is the most misunderstood of the five ADHDs because they're so in their own world that they're this inattentive type, and medication is actually the standard ADHD medication is potentially dangerous for them. They can get suicidal on those meds because it's already in their own world and you're pushing them further in. So they're the most misunderstood because they're in their own world and they don't quite fit in and they're awkward. And we need to get them more living in the world. So metal feeds water. I'm giving you the simple form for time, right? We would go through them all, but metal is about time, about, no, and water people have no sense of time. They get lost in time. They're like, it's the funny thing. They take too much time doing everything. They never, not they're supposed to be getting ready for school and they're still sitting on their bed thinking about their dreams or something, right? So I teach water kids how to feel what 5 minutes feels like. And I'll sit again, I'll say, all right, you tell me when you think 5 minutes is up. And you see with these water kids, an hour will go by and I say, dude, you were supposed to tell me when 5 minutes was up. Oh, yeah. Or they'll say, you know, now, and it's like 20 minutes have passed, right? So we train it. I give them a stopwatch. I have them start timing different things in their life. How long do you think it takes to brush your teeth? How long does it? So they start getting a feel for what time is in our human civilization. Their sense of time is Einstein's sense of time. It's infinite. But in living in the real world, which is metal, and classrooms are a lot of metal, there's real time. Okay, it's time to start class. It's time to have break. It's time to finish your work. Right. So they need to have that. They have to learn that. We want to grow that metal arm into a water child, and that actually changes their life because they're space cadets otherwise.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Okay. For the end, like you said, I'll hit those lightning
All right,
questions.
let's go. Let's do it. I want to do it, so that I don't want to take because we could have done all day. I told you this because your questions are so brilliant. But go ahead, hit me.
We could have, but we unfortunately cannot. Okay, you've spent years helping children, to return to their natural rhythm. That's how you call them. What would you say was the hardest part of teaching adults to do the same?
Wow, what a great question. So, in the short answer is in getting parents to embrace change in their own life. And the hook, the way to get them to do it, to motivate them, is their love of their child. That's the hook. So, in a way, it's the hardest and the easiest. If I can get them to realize they're doing this for their child, then they're stepping up and being heroes. But they have to change their own habits.
Mm.
And
And
people,
speaking of that, you asked them, to change their own rhythm before trying to fix the child, right?
not necessarily before, but while they're working with their child. Because before, I may never see them again. If I said before, and
Sure.
I'm going to
But
work with
still, you probably get some resistance. I mean,
Oh,
what
I
kind of
do.
resistance do you get when
Wait, I get resistance from them. I get resistance from teachers.
oh, right, right.
Same thing, right? I want them both to change.
Mm.
So change is growth. So, what I always tell parents is, and I'm sure you've heard me say this, I say it everywhere, my greatest teachers were children in my life, in my career, my own children, and all the kids I've taken care of, thousands and thousands of kids. But what they've taught me is how to change my perspective. And so that's what the hard part is, getting parents to change their view of their child as they're not broken, there's nothing wrong with them. We're just working on growing skill sets. You're part of the solution. You don't want to be part of the problem, you want to be part of the solution. You're so It takes a certain motivation and inspiration to get them there.
Definitely. I bet. You also use herbs and plant-based medicine in your treatments,
I
right?
do. And diet.
And diet. That's
Yeah.
important as well. But what would you say that it's the most, universal plant that you trust to help a child
Yeah,
regulate, no matter the elements we decided?
yeah, it's always hard to throw away who the child is because herbal medicine is not designed as a one size fits all. But I get where you're coming from with the question. And what I would answer as a short answer, since this is lightning rounds, is um, the adaptogen herbs, ashwagandha, zandra, um, ginseng, depending on the child and how hot or cold they are, in terms of their temperament. Ashwagandha, things like that are actually very, very, very good herbs. Scutellaria is another one, which is called skullcap or huangqin. These are go-to herbs that help release the tension in the body and help you adaptogens. And they're fairly safe. You've got to know the child and if they're on medication, what the interactions are and things like that. So I don't across the board recommend it.
Right, right. That's important. Um, what happened that made you, start questioning everything you were taught in Western medicine?
The short answer is my kids, because here these two kids came out of the same womb, the same woman, with the same sperm, hopefully, with the same um, diet, the same diet. They live in the same house, and they couldn't be more opposite. And how come nobody taught me that in my pediatric training? That must matter. Nature doesn't do things for no reason at all. Why is one of my, the reason I named my book Fire Child, Water Child is I have a fire child and I have a water child. Even though we have five elements, I dedicated the book to them. And so they couldn't be more opposite, fire and water, coming from the same environment. And so that opened my eyes to, well, this must mean something. And I wanted to follow that. I wanted to understand that better.
Brilliant. And the last question, why would you say a summit like this, conversations like this are important for, a parent of a child with ADHD?
The short answer is to inspire them to never give up hope, that your child is not broken, that there are things that can be done, and you have all these experts that are giving you tips. Try not to get overwhelmed with all the different voices, but the real answer is you. What you are doing. The depth of the questions you asked me shows how deeply you are committed to this, and parents will feel that when they are online. Because no, I've like I said before we went on, I've done many, many interviews. Nobody's ever asked the kind of deep questions, thoughtful questions that you are asking, and I really respect that. And so that's actually the meaning of the summit to me,
Thank you.
and I
Thank you.
thank you for that because it's a gift to the world.
Thank you so much. It's a huge honor coming from you, and I got really emotional because, yeah, I think this is important to throw back there and to help those who are in need. Thank you so much for helping us, see our kids in completely new lens, to help us see their hero powers and to
Never
understand.
lose the hero in anyone.
Right,
Always, if
right.
you see it in them, they'll feel seen.
Mm, beautiful. And let's wrap up with that. I couldn't say it better. Thank you so much for taking the time, Dr.
Of
Cowan.
course, be well, and I look forward to hearing the rest of the summit.
Brilliant. Take care.
Take care. Bye.
Bye bye. Are you loving the advice and insights you're getting? Well, you can get lifetime access to all the summit session when you upgrade your ticket to the VIP pass. This means you're not only getting unlimited access to the sessions, you will also unlock the audio version of the entire summit, expert action blueprint with key takeaways and action steps, English subtitles, and a brilliant workbook that will help you implement everything that you get. You see, the VIP Pass is purposely designed to help you digest all of the content from the summit and implement this advice in your own life. And as you know, the internet is flooded with advice about ADHD. But how much of it actually comes from credible sources? How many times have you been led astray by unknown or unverified advice? Well, unlimited access to the entire summit is a place where information is not only just abundant, it's also trustworthy. So, if you want to be confident in the ADHD strategies every step of the way, then I think this is a place to start. I'm totally positive that you're going to love the VIP Pass and all of the valuable resources that we have created for you. It's like having a personal library of expert knowledge right in your pocket. And here's the best part. If for any reason at all you don't love it, we'll refund you in full. No questions asked. So you really have nothing to lose. Grab your VIP Pass now and don't miss this opportunity.